All right. Welcome back. Hope you all had a great break. So we're quickly coming towards the end of the course, and you should all be feverishly working on your final projects and the last assignment. So we'll be meeting them for the next couple of weeks, mostly to discuss final requirements on the project, any challenges or questions you might have about the project requirements and whatnot. I will be still demonstrating several other techniques that might be useful to you, and I'll be sharing the source code as I've been doing for a while. And you're welcome to reuse that code as your own. And the expectation is that you are deploying all this to remote servers, right? That you are deploying your projects and assignments, obviously, onto Netlify, and backed by a remote server that is hosted either on Heroku or Render.js or AWS, right? Or any remote hosting service of your choice, right? So this week we'll have the last quiz, right? That will be on MongoDB, and let's see, and yeah, so everybody should be working towards the final project. The size of the teams, the maximum size of teams is 5 students. Although I would strongly discourage you from such a large team. But if you trust these folks, right, to collaborate with you, and you work well together, and you know each other, then yeah, sure. But I would say that ideal team size is anywhere between 2 and 3. I think 4 is already a little bit too big. 5 is, I think it's unmanageable. But again, if there are cases where folks have been working together for a while, they know each other, and perhaps in other semesters and other courses, then that's fine. But yeah, no, that's the maximum team size is 5. Yep. So the TA should have shared a spreadsheet where folks can or teams can register for the demo, and so the demos will start on the 11th of December, and so the project is due on the 10th, right? But we won't start to grade them until the 11th, and so what will happen is that you'll all meet at the agreed upon time slot with a TA or myself, right? And you will demo your project for about an hour maximum. And the TAs will ask you to demonstrate the various features that are required in the requirements document. And and they'll score you according to the requirements. They'll ask you to log in, to create an account, right? To show you your profile, that you can modify the information in your profile, right? That you can search, right, or interact with a third-party API, retrieve data, display that data on the screen, and then do a subsequent query for more details about a particular item, and then merge some of that information with information that might exist in your own database, right? Such as somebody having bookmarked that item, or ordered that item, or left a review of that item, or any rating or whatever, right? Any relationship between that item and a person, right? And so much like we demonstrated last week, right? We demonstrated how to create relationships such as like, right? Where a user might like an album, right? We need to store in the database that information, right? That relationship between these two entities, right? And so yeah, they'll ask you to demonstrate that you should be able to navigate from that item if anybody had left a relationship, such as a like or a hate or a rating or whatever, you should be able to navigate to the person, right, who created that relationship. And you should see, in that person's account or profile, you should see that relationship, right? You should see, all the movies that that person liked, all the books that they hate, all the sports that they follow, all their favorite teams, or whatever your particular topic, right? Whatever domain of choice. Okay. And one of the common types of relationships between objects, right, is a person having either following another person, or maybe leaving a message for that person, or maybe having a faculty right, grading a student, right, or some a manager managing many employees. Those are various types of relationships that you can implement. For instance, in the Canvas website that we've been working, there are relationships between courses that are contain many modules, right, and contain many assignments. Okay, or they might contain multiple quizzes or exams, and then each quiz can have multiple questions, right? And then each question might have multiple answers, right, that given by multiple students, right? So there's lots of types of relationships between multiple collections, right, that are have a lot of information. So I'm going to be demonstrating some of that, continuing learning about those skills and how to create relationships, how to create them, delete them, update them, retrieve them, display them, right? So I will demonstrate some of that today. Our last day together is next Thursday. Right, so next Thursday will be our last lecture together, and we will have a review of the exams, right? So I will share with you a PDF document that contains several questions that are representative from prior semesters, right? And we'll go over together. We'll solve the questions together. So read that, come with questions, perhaps try to do it on your own, right? And then you can compare how I solved it, and then we can exchange notes. Okay. Let's see what else. You should be also completing, the last assignment, the Mongo assignment. To give you a chance to practice how to work with MongoDB. For the undergrads, they will have exams live in person, right, in the university at that particular date, but that doesn't apply to graduate students. I do have to have faculty grades by the 18th, December 18th. So that week, that last week, the week of the 11th, that's going to be a very busy week of demos and just wrapping up all those assignments or projects and exams and quizzes. So that last week, I'm not going to be very much available at all. So I'm not going to have office hours that week. So the last office hours I'm going to have is the end of next week. And we'll make ourselves a little more available, so that because it is the end and folks are working on their final projects. So I'll probably be holding office hours every day, till next week. Okay. And what else? I think that's it. Demo week is, so the final project is due December 10th, and the demos start the following day, so December 11th, the week of the 11th. So I think the 11th, it's a Monday. So that Monday we'll have the first demos, and it'll go on for the next 4 days, right? And I think there's 4 time slots or 4 days where the TAs have created time slots. You can choose the TA and what day. Now, obviously, probably the So you can keep working on your projects all the way up to the day that you are demoing, right? Even though the due date is December 10th, you can keep working, right? If you want. If you think you need a few more hours to keep working, we're not going to check to see if you deployed your projects, beyond December 10th. We do have to put a due date. After that, after December 10th, you could be graded at any time, right? And you'll be graded the time slot that you choose. So if you choose to be graded, the Thursday after of that week of the 11th, that would give you a couple more days, 3 more days or something, right? But it depends what time slot you choose. But you're welcome to work up until the demo. I don't encourage it since folks, under pressure tend to break things. And so, it'd be unfortunate that you break your demo right before the demo, right? So if you intend to do that, make sure that you have, a backup version that is working, right? That you don't break that, right? That you leave something always ready for the demo, right? Because that's going to be a very short week with everybody very busy in grading. So we're not going to have a lot of opportunities to do a do-over, right? That it breaks and then we have to reschedule something. We'd like to get it done on that one meeting, okay? Although we do have a backup plan for the Friday. As a if something happens, right, we'll have a for some reason there's some catastrophic happens to your demo, we can maybe put you towards the end. Right. Also, the week of the 11th, the final exam will be made available, and you'll have a couple of days to take the exam, the final exam, on your own, it'll be available for several days, right? So you can choose whenever you want to take it during those 3 or 4 days that will be available. What else? I think that's it. Any questions? Where is the link to the sign up? I'm not sure. I think the TAs were going to share that at some point. I'm sure they'll be making a post on Piazza. If they haven't already, I don't know. Also, I am going to share with you a form for you to fill out where you're going to list all the team members in your team. So you'll say, what the team is, and what are the team members. Hopefully, most of your team members or all of them are in the same section. Although there are some teams that have cross participants, right, that are in different sections. So that form is going to allow you to fill out, who is in your team, what section are they in, right? So that because everybody in the team is going to get the same grade for the project. It's hopefully there won't be any drama towards the end of the semester. That usually there's 1 or 2 teams where there's concerns that some team member went AWOL, right? They began participating at the beginning of the semester, but then they kind of disappeared, and so everybody's had to work harder than they expected, right? And so it's very hard to towards the end of the semester to deal with things like that. So yeah, that's why I prefer smaller teams, right? Bigger teams tend to have those kind of issues. All right, there are no questions. Then I'm going to discuss implementing relationships between multiple users, right? In particular, I'm going to implement the follows relationship, right? So for instance, a user might find another user because maybe somebody liked the same album, right? And you find that person, and then you can navigate to that person's account, right? And then maybe follow them, right? And so this is a two-way relationship, very much like the likes is also a two-way relationship, right? That an album could be liked by many people, but then one person can then like many albums. And this too, the follows relationship is also a many to many, where one person can follow many people, but then one person can be followed by many people, right? So in those cases, you can ask bidirectional questions, right? From depending on from which point of view do you see them, right? If you see them from the person doing the following, right, they are following many people, right? But also, again, from the same viewpoint from the person, that person is also being followed by many folks, right? So they can do follow, right, but they can be also followed. Right? So let's take a look at that, right? How would you implement something like that? Also, I want to cover a technique that allows you to populate content, right? It kind of plays the role of the joins when you join multiple tables in a relational database, right? Where you can have foreign key, primary key matchup, right? But then joins allow you to pick, some fields from one table and some fields from another table, right? Combine them into a single result, right? So I'd like to show you how you would do something similar like that, but in MongoDB and using Mongoose library. Okay. Yeah. So let's see where we left off. So I believe we had a few users that could log in. Alice, I don't know her password. Let's check. Let's bring up the database. Let's see, Compass. Let's bring in the database here. Let's connect. And the database should be this one and has users. And Alice, is Alice even here? Maybe not. There's no Alice? There's one, there was an Alice. Okay, let's create an Alice. Okay, so let's sign up. Oh, we never implemented sign up. How come we never implemented sign up? That's weird. So I'm just going to create an Alice here in the database. Let's see, username. I'm going to change this to Alice. And her password is just going to be 123. First name is going to be Alice. Last name will be Wonderland. And she's an admin. So update. So I should be able to log in as Alice now. So this would be Alice 123. Okay, so there it is. I was able to log in. All right, so she can log in. She's an admin, and she can see multiple users, right? Also, we started working on likes, I believe, right? That you could search, right, and maybe Beatles, right, and go to a particular record, right, or album, and then we can see that we can display the people that liked this album, and we can navigate to their account, right? So one thing that we would like to be able to do is, say I'm logged in as Alice and I find Lady of Lights, right, that liked this album. And so, and you'll notice that here you have the relationships that, Lady of Light Galadriel likes this album. And so anything that she's related to, like for instance, the albums that she likes are listed here. But also would like to be able to any other relationship that she might have. For instance, people that are following her, right? Or people that she's following, right? So for instance, if I navigate back to my account, I should be, and if I follow Galadriel and I go back to my account, I should be able to see, right, that that I am now following Lady Galadriel, right? So if I go to my account, right, there it is. I should be able to see her, right? So yeah, so how would we implement this, right? So let's see. So in that here, we might want maybe a button that would allow us to follow this person, right? And then you would see the people that this who's following this person, right? So let's see. We would like to in the front end here, where we are displaying the user's details, put maybe a follow button, right? So here next to the user's details, maybe we could have a button here that says follow, right? So button follow. There it is, right? There's follow. Maybe we can make it a little prettier. Class name. And this could be BTN warning, right? And maybe we can pull it all the way to the right-hand side, right? At float end. Right, so we have it there, follow there. Okay, yeah. So how would we implement this, right? So here we have two things, right? We have the person who's logged in is the one who's doing the following, and they are following this particular person, right? So when we click on follow, we would want to notify the server that the currently logged in person is now following this person, right? And so we would need to provide the ID of the person who we want to follow. We don't need to provide the server with the person who's logged in, because the server already knows that, right? It's already in the request. Right? So we don't need to provide that. We just say, follow this person. That's it, right? Who's following? Well, the person who's currently logged in, right? Same thing if I unfollow. I don't need to say who, because who's doing the unfollowing is the person who's already logged in. So we have that information on the server. We just need to say, who are you unfollowing, and something like that. Make sense? So now if I'm looking at this person here and I'm not this person, I would always display here all the people that this person is following or are following Lady Galadriel, right? I would display it here, based on the ID of the person I'm looking at, right? Unless I'm looking at my account. If I'm looking at my account, then it's obviously it's the people that I'm following or that are following me, right? So yeah, so we always have to be careful. What is the context, right? Of from whose point of view are we displaying that? So in that case, it's a little more challenging, right? So yeah, so let's see. So we'll need a collection that keeps track of who's following who, right? So let's do that. So on the server side, we'll need to implement a follows relationship. So we'll create a follows. First, we'll create a schema for this. So schema, so this we'll need a mongoose for this. So we'll import mongoose, and we'll create the schema as new schema like that. We'll give it so this is a follow schema, right? So we need to know who is doing the following and who's being followed, right? So we'll keep track of the follower, right? The follower. And so for this, what we're going to keep track of is the ID of the person who is doing the following, right? So the type here will be of type object ID. So we're going to store the primary key, right, of the person, of the user object, right, record that is doing the following, right? And also we are later on, because we want to do an operation that looks like a join, but not quite, and because what we want to join this collection that has only IDs, we want to join it with the user's collection that has all the information, the username, password, first name, last name, all that, right? so that when we display all these following, right, we display the person's, the actual person, not just the ID, right? So for that, we need to provide, right, the name of the model, right, of the collection, right, that is being used to store the information, right? And I don't remember what collection we use, what the name of the model that we used. So let's see, users, the model that we use. Okay, we use users. So I'm using the same name as the collection, right? I usually try to do that, use the name of the collection everywhere so that it's easy to remember. So yeah, so that's the follower, right? Also, we need the person who's being followed, right? Followed. Same thing. It's going to be a reference to the object, the document that represents the person who's being followed, and we are going to store this in a collection called follows. Okay. There we go. And we're going to export this. So export default, the schema. Okay. All right. All right. So we get the schema. So this is going to represent the relationship between these two people, right? Who's one being the follower and one being the follow. You can also, this schema or something like this, it'd be useful like for implementing maybe somebody sending a message to someone else, right? A text message or leaving a message in their timeline or something, right? Where you have a sender who's sending the message, and then you have a receiver, who's receiving this message, right? Plus maybe one extra field to capture the actual message that was sent, right? So anyway, yeah, so we have that. We will need a model for this as well. So let's create the model. So model. And here we're gonna import the schema .js. We'll probably need Mongoose as well. And we'll create the model. It's just going to be, I'm going to call it follows, right? And it's going to be termed based on that schema. And I'm going to export this, right? So I'm going to export default, export default model. There we go. And then we're ready to start working on the DAO, right? So this is DAO, and this is going to have the various operations that we want to do on the fallows, right? So let's import the model, right, from the model.js file, and we're going to implement several operations. So let's see, we're going to need to export const. We want to say that user follows user, right? So user follows, yeah, user follows another user, right? So that's going to do an insert. That's going to I'm going to provide the IDs of both, right? The person who's doing the following, the follower, and the followed, right? And that I'm going to implement based on the model. So there's going to be model. I'm going to insert a new record, who the follower. I'm going to pass you the ID of the person who's doing the following, which in this case, typically will be the person who's logged in, right? And I'm going to provide you the ID of the person who is being followed, right? And that's the ID that I'm going to pass in the URL, right? So if I'm looking at, so I'm looking at here, right? And I'm looking at this, this person, I'm logged in as Alice, but I'm looking at Galadriel and I click on follow, I'm going to send the ID of Galadriel, right? And then the server is going to figure out, who's logged in, right? It's Alice. And so that's going to be the two IDs that I pass in. There's a more compact way of writing this. So for instance, if we say follower here and follow here, right? We can make this much shorter. Like that, right? So that's much more compact, right? And it says exactly the same thing, right? Now these names here, follower, right, is what the model's expecting. The schema is expecting follower, right? Those are the fields that I'm creating, and the values are the IDs that I'm passing in, like that, right? So a user follows another user. Now a user unfollows another user. Again, follows, unfollow, right? And this is going to be delete. I'm going to delete the record that says that this person is following that other person, right? So what else? Another thing that I like to be able to do is that, if I'm logged in, I want to see the people that I'm following. I also want to see the people that are following me, right? So I want to, export const, find user, find followers of user. So I'll give you the ID of the person who's being followed, right? And so I'm going to, we're going to filter by the followed, right? And I'm going to populate the followers. So what this is going to do, right, is going to look at the ID of the follower, this ID, right? And Mongo is going to make a subsequent query. It's going to make another query because this is only the ID. I'm only storing the ID in the database, right? So what Mongoose is going to do, if I do use this populate, is going to look at the ID of the field here, right? And says, this references a person, right, in the collection users. I'm going to go fetch that record, right? And instead of just giving you the ID, just responding with the ID, I'm going to replace it with the actual document, right? This is very much like a join, right? In a relational database, right? I'm using a foreign key, right, that onto another table, right? And then I'm pulling the fields that I want. Here, we're not specifying which fields. So if you don't specify which fields, it's going to bring over all the fields, right? Which is fine. All right, so I want to go the other way around, right? I want to know the people that I am following. So these are, find the followers. So these, find the people that are following me, right? Or the followed, right? Or find the people that I'm following, right? So find the followed, right, by user. So I give you the follower, and this will return all the followed. Again, I'm going to populate so that the followed field, which normally would just contain only the primary key, is going to go fetch that document in the users table or collection, right? And it's going to replace, instead of just giving me the ID, right, it's going to return the actual document. Okay. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other things we could implement, right? But I think this is enough. One of the things we might want to know is how many are following me, right? And how many people am I following, right? So the counts and things like that. But that's you could implement that on your own, right? So let's now create the routes, right, that we can use from the interface, user interface, right, to integrate with this functionality, right? So we'll have the routes, and so here we'll bring in the DAO. So we'll do import as DAO from the DAO file. And let's implement the function, right? So this will be a function. This will be the follows routes. I'll provide a reference to the to express, right? And here we'll need to re-implement all these functions, right? So all these functions again here, right? Which will be like that, right? So let's so user follows user, find followers of user, find followed users by user. Is that the name I use here? Oh, I did. Followers of user. Follow. Did I? Okay, my AI is pretty good at figuring out what I'm doing. So yeah, so these are going to be the functions that are going to be using the DAO, right? Integrating it with the user interface. So the user interface is going to provide, right, if user follows user, in the requests, right, it's going to have the ID of the person who is doing the following, right? And same thing here, right? Also, or who are we following? Actually, no. Who are we following? Who are we unfollowing, right? here, find followers of user, and this will always be from the point of view of what? Well, if it's me as an account, right, then it'll be from the point of view of myself. But what if I'm navigating to someone else's account, right? I'll provide the ID of that person, right? So this will, I'll need to provide the parameter. Okay, so this, it will create some endpoints to do the following, right? Follows probably need to say API follows or follow, and then I'll provide the ID of the person who's being followed, right? So followed. Okay. And to unfollow, I'll do API. And this is so this will be maybe unfollow. Actually, if you remember, we want this to be not have any we don't want to use verbs, right? If you're using a RESTful API, right? So maybe this will be so follow also, right? And also plural is the norm, right? And then here's the followed. So I'm going to give you, in both cases, the person who I am following follows, and then the person who's being followed, or the person who's being unfollowed. Okay, user unfollow person. Okay, the other one is I want to know if I give you the ID of the person, retrieve for me all the people, all the followers of that person, right? And if I give you the follower, right, find all the followed by that person, right? Now notice that these APIs are identical to one another. So there's a small typo at line 10. Thank you. User unfollows user follow. Thank you. Notice that these two get are identical from the point of view of the pattern, right? So they are indistinguishable from the for the server. So we need to distinguish somehow. So here, find followers. So maybe this better would be followers, right? And this is followers, right? And then this is following, right? User, let's see. So I think maybe I like this better. So users followed. This is what, and then yes, the followers. Yeah, I like that better. It reads better. Given the ID of the user, I want the followers, right? And so users, right? So this is we're given the follower, right? Give me all the people that this person is following. Yeah. Delete, would this be better? Because this follow is really the ID of a person, right? Follow. Okay, so this might be I like maybe this users, the followed, right? And then follow. There we go. I like that better. And then this would be users like that, and then followed. There we go. I think I like that better. So yeah, so this is API users followed, right? The person who's being followed, and then I am creating a new follows. Yeah, perfect. In the follows collection, and here I am deleting the same record, right? And who's doing the following, right? The person or unfollowing, it'll be the current user who's logged in. Okay. All right, excellent. So let's do that. Let's implement each one of these, right? Yeah, thank you, Mattia. Okay, so user follows user, right? So the follower, who's the follower? Let's see. the follower, right? The follower is going to be the request.session, right? The current user, right? And the ID of that person, okay? And the followed is the params that I am passing as an argument. This is the person who's being followed, perfect. And what we're going to do is that, oops, we're going to do DAO, right? We say DAO dot user follows user. And so this is the record that gets created, right? And I'm just going to send it back as a feedback, right? That the follow was created, right? So same thing with unfollow, right? The follower is going to be same thing, the person who's currently logged in, and the followed is going to be I'm going to pass it in as an argument, right? As an attribute. And then I'm going to unfollow, I'm going to delete, right? User unfollows user. And this is going to be a status. Let's say whether it was successful or not, right? I'm going to return that. And then find the followers of user. And we're going to the followed, right? And then we're going to say, okay, find followers of user, and here's the one who's being followed. So yeah, exactly, right? And then these are the followers. I'm going to return the followers, perfect. And then the other one is kind of the inverse, right? We retrieve the follower, right? And we retrieve the people that are being followed by this follower, right? Right. Maybe a better name for this would be, find followers of followed, right? Without user. Yeah, I think would have been a better name. All right, so it looks like we're done here. We're going to export this. We'll do export, and then in our app.js, we'll need to import this new route. So import follow routes, right? And then provide the app instance. Okay, perfect. All right, so the server is up and running. Let's say, did it crash? Okay, it hasn't crashed. Okay, so now we can go back to the client and start, interacting with this, right? So let's go back to the client. And so here we have follow. And when we click on this button, we want to do what? We want to post here. That's what we want to post. The person who is being followed, right? And it'll figure out who the following is. The follower is the currently logged in user. So I cannot follow somebody unless I am logged in, right? All right, so yeah, so let's do that. First, we'll need a client so we can talk to the server. So let's create a directory for the follows, our new server API, right? And so we'll create here a client that is going to use Axios, right? So we're going to import Axios right here. But this Axios is going to need to participate in the session, right? So it needs to turn on credentials, right? So we'll do const clients short create with credentials true. The base API, I guess, yes, that is correct. It is 4,000. Is it API? They all start with API, right? And they all start with API users, right? So let's do API users. So meaning it will append this to all the requests that gonna go out, right? Follow. Okay, so user. Okay, very good. And we'll close this. Oops. There we go. And and here we're going to implement, what are we going to implement? All these functions. We're going to implement all these functions again, right? But on the user interface, right? So let's paste in here. This will be export, and so this will be an async. It'll provide the ID of the one who's being what? The one who's being followed, right? Right. And so let's see, what is it expecting? It's going to expecting API users, right? Then the followed, and then follows, right? So this is follows, but it's going to put, it needs to put the ID in front, right? So we'll need to, this needs to be like that, and I'm going to put in front of this the followed here, right? I'm not going to pass it like that. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I'm going to, and this here is going to be appended in front of the post, right? So this is a nice base URL parameter of the Axios, right? Which it allows you to make it a little more compact, so you don't have to have these really long strings, right? Okay, so I want to, so user follows user, and then user unfollows user, which is that one, right? Perfect, right? User unfollows user, perfect, and then the followed, and is going to do a delete. So there's a delete, right? And it's going to go to saying follows. Okay. So yeah, so this has to match this delete right here, right? Already have that from here, right? And then this part is this part, follows. Okay. And then we're going to implement this one, right? Find followers for user. So this would be export const find followers for user. So that's that's going to be the followed. The ID of the followed is going to do a get. Oops. Let's see. So API users, and then followed, and then followers. Perfect. Excellent. And then the find follows. Wait. So the find followed users by user. So find followed by user. Copy and paste that in there. And then this is the follower that I'm going to embed in there. Perfect. So it's going to put it in the URL. Followers, follows, is this following, right? Following, that has to match. I think that's it, right? All right. Let's see. Now that we have the client implemented, in the detail screen, we can bring in that client. So this is import star as follows clients. Is that where it's implemented? Yeah. Okay. So we can when we click on this button, we want to send that post, right? So let's implement const follow user is going to send the follow client user follows user, and this is the ID of the person who we are looking, right? This is the ID of whose account we're looking at, and we're going to send that ID, and that is an await, and we're going to call it right here. We're going to say on click follow user, right? There we go. When we click on it. All right. Okay, let's try it out. See if this blows up. Okay. Let's see. In the database, this is a database, and we can refresh. Okay, notice that we have a new collection there as follows, but it should be empty because nobody is following anybody. We can refresh. It's empty. So hopefully we can populate this now by clicking that follows button. All right, so let's try it out. So yeah, so we are okay. We're not logged in. We're not logged in because the server started. All right, so let's sign in as Alice. Okay, sign in. All right, and let's do a search. Let's do a search. Beals. Let's go to this one, and we're gonna follow lady and pony. Right. So let's first do Galadriel. And let's inspect to see if we are sending the request correctly. Let's go to network. And network, let's see. Click on it, see if this blows up. Okay, it didn't blow up. Okay. Let's see. Headers. So this went out. And the response is presumably we were able to insert the record in there. And the follower, hopefully this is Alice, and this is a Lady Galadriel, which should be this right here, right? So 6541E5, 6541E5. Okay, that looks promising, right? Let's go to a database, see if we'll get inserted. Let's refresh. And indeed, it looks like we were able to refresh this correctly. Okay, let's also follow the other person, right? Which I think was Tony, right? Let's go back. And Tony, let's click on that and let's follow him too. Let's clear this out, follow. And now we should be, it's the same person, it should be now following this Tony, right? So let's refresh this, and we have these two follows records. So who's the follower? The same one, right? 1F0, 1F0. That should be Alice, right? And there should be Tony, and there should be Galadriel, right? So anyway, so we have those records. Now, if I refresh this, Tony, I should see that Alice is following Tony, right? If I go to Galadriel, also, I should see that she is also being followed by Alice, right? But if I go to Alice, I should be able to see that she is following both of these folks, right? So yeah, so let's do that. Let's try that out. So this is the same screen. So the screen should be able to retrieve the followers. Yeah. So for instance, if I'm Tony or I'm looking at Galadriel, she should be able to retrieve the followers, right? So follow followers, right? Okay, and I'm gonna fetch the followers when I visit this screen, right? So I'm going to do a fetch and say const fetch followers, which is going to use the follows client, right? Set the followers, and I'm going to invoke this. Right? Notice this find followers of user, which is the ID of the person who I'm looking at, right? The ID of that person, and I'm going to invoke this, on load, and I'm going to display them, say, somewhere down here, right? So this is going to be maybe at the end here, we're going to say, H3 followers, and we'll create maybe a div, a list group, which is going to iterate over the followers, and it's going to create a couple of links, link, right? Which is going to navigate to the person's account, right? With the ID of the follower. So these followers, so these followers are the records, the follows records, and in there there are follower and followed, right? So this is follower, and so this is really a follows record, right? A follows record, which has a field called follower that has an ID, right? And then we can then render maybe the name of that person, right? So we can render maybe the follower username, right? And then close the link, close that, and close the div, right? Let's see, like that, something like that. There it is. See that? Followers has Alice, the username of the person who's doing the following. Perfect. And we might want to make a key here, right? That is equal maybe to the index, and we might want to dress this a little bit, which has maybe a list group item, right? So that looks a little better, and I can presumably I can visit Alice. Oh, maybe not. Actually, no. This actually did work. If I refresh, notice that it will render Alice. But why didn't it show it before? Like if I go back, notice that the ID here is changing, right? But the user interface is not changing, right? Even though I'm going back and forth, it's not reloading. It should, right? This is Tony. If I refresh, notice it renders Tony, right? But if I go and visit Alice, this should have re-rendered with Alice's information, right? I need to refresh. Okay, so that's annoying, right? So the reason that's happening, right, is that so this code should rerun, right, when this ID changes, because this ID is changing. This ID is changing, but it is not re-rendering the screen, right? And the reason for that is that React.js is lazy, right? So once it renders a component, right, unless there's a state that changes, right, it won't re-render the screen. And so notice that what's changing is this parameter, which is not a state variable. Okay? If the state variable is changing, then yes, it would re-render, right? So one way to fix this is that we can declare that ID as a dependency here. You can say, hey, if that ID changes, I want you to refetch, do all this work again, right? Because that's going to set the environment variables and it's going to cause a re-render, right? So let's see now. Now, if I go back, notice that indeed it is doing the query again. Notice that if I go to Alice, notice that it is fetching the user, the likes, the followers, right? And if I go back, right, also is re-rendering, is doing, fetching the followers, fetching the likes, right, and the ID. Okay, so yeah, so that dependency array, we hadn't used it before, but it's perfect for this case, right? That things are changing. It's not a state variable that is changing. Otherwise, it would cause a re-render. But we can just keep an eye. We can tell the use effect to keep an eye on certain things that change, right, and to cause a reload of the and a re-rendering of the component. Okay. All right. Yeah. So we have the followers. So when I go to Alice, I want to render the people that Alice is following, right? So let's do that too. So we can also have here the people that we are following, right? If I could spell this, following. Okay, set following. And it's going to look very similar. So fetch the following. So const fetch following. So following. So find followers followed by user ID. Yep. And it's going to set the following like that. And this is going to run unload. So fetch following. And we're going to render this as a list again. So these are the followers. And then we're going to render here the people that are that we are following. So following, follows, link, index, yep. List group, follows, followed, yep, that's right. And then follows, followed username, perfect, link. And then we need that div at the end. There it is. So Alice is following these people, right? And when I navigate to Lady Galadriel, it shows that that Alice is following Lady Galadriel, right? And if I go to Iron Man, it also shows that Alice is also following Iron Man, right? Which makes total sense, right? So same thing, right? If Tony Stark, right, visits Alice and follows her, right? This shows that that Alice is following Tony, but Tony is also following Alice, right? And so if I again, if I go to oh, wait a minute. No, because the following is by the person who's logged in. I wasn't logged in as Tony. Now we have Alice following Alice, basically. Right. Yeah. I would have to log in as Tony, right? Visit Alice, and then it would show that Tony is following Alice. Yeah. No. Now we have a recursive call here, right? That Alice is following Alice. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so there it is. So we have followings, right? That these are a circular reference, right, of folks following each other. So how about unfollow? Okay, so for instance, like for instance, if I'm visiting, if I'm logged in as Alice, right, and if I'm logged in as Alice, I should not be able to follow myself for one thing, right? Also, if I visit Tony, I am already following Tony, right? I'm already following Tony. So I should not be able to follow Tony. I should not be able to follow Tony because I already follow Tony. I would want to be able to have a button that says to unfollow Tony, right? Okay, so how would we do that? I would need to do what? I would need to, so I'm Alice, right? And if I'm listed in the followers, if I am listed in the followers, then this should be unfollow, right? But the problem we have here is that I don't have the current user here, do I? So in the current user details, we don't have the current user. So there's nothing that would let us know, right, that we are the ones who are doing the following. And so we would need to fetch the current user so we can make that distinction, right? That comparison, right? So how would we do that? Well, I guess we can fetch the current user. A better implementation would be for us to fetch it and store it maybe in a shared place, right? Maybe like a reducer, right? And keep track of that across the entire application. But we don't have that. Right? So for now, let's do the brute force, right? Let's go fetch the current user. So const current user, and we can fetch the current user. We can fetch the current user using const fetch current user. So client, this is the client, this client, right? This is the user client. We're going to go to users, and it's account. Account is going to give us the current user, right? So this is account, right? And once we have that, we can set the current user to the current user like that, right? And we're going to fetch them when we load. There we go. So we should be able to display here the current user, right? Let's see if we do have it, just to make sure. Current user. I want to display. Let's see. I just want to display the current user like that. Let's see. Can we do that? Yeah. Okay. So this should be Alice, right? That should be Alice. If I go to Alice, yeah, it ends with df10. Perfect. Yes. Okay. So I have the current user. Perfect. So follow should not be shown if the current user's ID is the same as the ID that I'm visiting. I'm visiting my own account, so I should not be able to follow myself, right? So, for instance, if I say, if current user, and the ID is not equal, right? Is not equal to the ID, then, right, we show the follow button. Okay, so notice I'm Alice. I should not be able to follow myself, right? So actually, I should not have this record here. So let's remove it from here, I think. Let's refresh. So this is Alice following herself, right? So I'm going to remove that, delete that, right? Okay, there we go. So we no longer have Alice following herself, right? So notice that because I am Alice, I'm logged in as Alice, I can't follow myself. But if I go to Lady Galadriel, right, I can follow her, right? Well, I already followed her, right? Wait, did I? Lady Galadriel? Yes, I am already following her, so I should not be able to follow her again, right? I should instead, I would instead display unfollow, right? So actually in the in this case here, here I would have both buttons, the follow button and the unfollow button, right? So let's have here the unfollow button. So again, button, and here I would have unfollow, right? And we need to make a common parent element like that. So yeah, and we'll need to paint this a little better. So class name, button, danger, red, and then float this at the end. Float this at the end. Okay. So yeah. So if I am already following this person, right? So if the current person is listed here, then I would show unfollow. If I'm not listed, then I would show follow, right? So let's do that. So let's see. So how do we do that? So we have let's see. Let's find the function. Let's use a function to do that, right? The function. So this is already following, right? So that is what? That is that so I have the following sum. Let's see my AI. Let's see, following sum in the list of following is the follower me, basically, right? So we can do already following. So I could say I could make this a list like that, right? And say that if I'm already following, then already following, then I render this guy, right? Otherwise, I render this other guy, right? And follow like that. And then that, and then this. Do we need this? Do we need this? I don't think I need this. So curly bracket like that. All right, let's see. Okay, there we go. Oh, is it backwards? Did I do it backwards? So already following, then I want unfollow. Huh? Let's render this. Let's see what this comes out to be. Already following. And wait, I am ID. This should be. Let me show the ID here. Wait a minute. Let me render not only the username. Let me render the ID. Just make sure I have the IDs correct. Let me render the username and also the ID. Of the following. And here too, of the follower. Okay, we have Alice, followers. Oh, okay, so it's in the followers, not in the following. Already following. Okay, so this is the followers. Followers. Okay, there we go. Now we have the unfollow, right? Yeah, so what about who else? Let's see. So if I go to followers and I go to Iron Man, also I can only unfollow Iron Man, right? Now I do want to verify that that is actually correct, right? So let's remove the other follower. So see if I can follow them again. So I think this is Iron Man. So let's remove that. Delete. And so let's refresh this. Okay, now I can follow, right? Because I'm no longer following. So, but if I go to Alice, and Alice, I can't follow Alice because it's me. right? I can't follow or unfollow. And but Galadriel, I'm already following, so I can unfollow. Okay, perfect. What about unfollow? We implement unfollow. Unfollow. So here's follow user, and we can implement unfollow. So const unfollow user. We use status follows client. User unfollows user, right? And close that. And we're going to click on that with this button right here. I'm going to say on click unfollow user. Okay. All right, let's see. Let's unfollow. Okay, now we can follow Galadriel, right? So notice that now Alice is not following anybody, I believe. Yeah, see, she's not following anybody. She would have to again search, right? Find Beetle, blah, blah, blah. Go here, right? And go to Galadriel. She's not following Galadriel, so she can follow her, right? And so if I go to Alice, now she's following Lady Galadriel. If I go there, I cannot follow her again. I can unfollow, right? So yeah, excellent. So it is working. Perfect. Right, makes sense? Everybody good? Any questions on that? All right. Yeah, so right. So notice the inconvenience, right, of having to deal with the current user here, right? What do we have to do? We have to fetch the current user. So anytime that we have to deal with the current user, we're just going to go fetch the current user. That's very inconvenient, right? So instead, it'd be nice that we would have a central place for um, being able to keep track of the current user, right? So how could we do that? Well, one way to do that, right, is to have a reducer, right, that keeps track of the current user, right? So for instance, we could, here in the users in the project, right, have a reducer, right, that keeps track, right, of the current user state variable. Right? So we'll have to create a slice, right? And so let's create a slice. We have the current user here, current user, which initially is null. Maybe that's the only thing we need to remember. We create the slice. So this is the user. This is the user slice, I guess. And so the name is user, initial state, reducer. So we want to set the current user. So we're gonna go fetch the current user from the account, and we're gonna set it here, right? We're gonna store it right there. Okay, and we're going to export that action and also export the reducer. Perfect. Then I guess we need a store, right? Which we never implemented for our project. So let's create a store. So store where we can import that reducer. So we can import the user reducer. No, wait, that's not it. User reducer. User reducer. Huh? What did I call it? User slice, user blah blah, and this is in reducer. Oh, okay. Oh, so we didn't give it names. Okay, so is it default? Yes. Okay, so user reducer from users reducer. Okay, is that users? I think. Yeah, there we go. And then we can create. Well, we can say store. We're gonna do configure store. Yep, configure store. We'll need to import that. So import configure store. And so the reducer is just going to be this user reducer. Okay. There we go. And I'm actually going to use that name. Just user reducer. And I'm going to export this. And then in the project, right? In the project, we can import that store. We can import the store. We say, import the store and also the provider. And then we can provide to everybody that state, right? Provider store, and we'll close it down here. There we go. Okay, so now I should be able to retrieve that current user from anywhere, right? Which right now it's null. Okay, so how do I populate it? Well, one place that can be populated is when I log in. I log in and I store the person in that reducer, right? So let's open up the sign-in screen. Sign-in screen. So here we have here's the credentials, here's the user, that is the current user. And then we navigate to project account, right? So this is a perfect time to populate that, right? And then everybody in the rest of the application, right, will know who the current user is by using a selector. Okay. So let's do that. So we'll need a dispatcher, right? We'll so import the use dispatch, dispatch, right? We'll need also the let's see, we need the set current user from the reducer. And then in here we can say dispatch, set current user, and the user, right? So now it's stored in this global reducer, and anybody who wants to receive it, right, can select it out. Yep. So yeah, so let's try it out. Dispatch. Oh, we need to use a use dispatch. So const use dispatch. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So let's so one place where I would want to know who's logged in is maybe in the nav screen, right? In the navigation here on the sidebar, right? So for instance, if I'm logged in, if I go to my account and I'm logged in, then it makes no sense to also provide these two links, right? Like sign in and sign up. That's only if you're not logged in, right? If you are logged in, I wouldn't want to see that. Also, this account link should not be available unless I am logged in, right? I can click on the account. Makes sense if I'm already logged in. So one component that would be interested in knowing the current user is the navigation screen, right? Or the navigation component. So let's do that. So in the navigation component, what I call it, I forget what I called it. So projects, where's the navigator? Index projects. Oh, okay. Okay. It's not a component. It's not a component. So let's make this into a component. Let's create this a little component here. So nav. So this is nav.js, right? So function navigation, right? And so this will be this is going to be I'm going to copy this from here. It's these links. So I'm just going to copy this. I think that's it. Cut it from here. There's going to be a return like that. And then I'm going to export this. So it's going to be export navigation, and I'm going to import from here. So this would be navigation like that, right? Which is imported from there. Perfect. And then probably need to import a few things here. React, link, anything else? And there it is. So it's the same thing, right? But now I can have logic in there on what I want to show or not show, right? So we should be able to extract the current user, right? And say, import, use selector from Redux, perfect. We can say current user is state. Well, this is state. Would be user reducer oops, user reducer, right? And then we can destruct that from there. Perfect. So just to make sure that we have that information, let's render it at the end. Maybe we can create a little, oops, like that, right? And render it right here. So this would be, if there is a current user, I want to render the JSON stringify current user. Wait, no, this is what I want to render. Current user, blah, blah, blah. So if it's not, wait, am I logged in? Current user, blah, 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 stringify. Let's see, let's remove that. Stringify. No, huh? Oh, because maybe we didn't log in. Let's sign out. Let's log in. Alice. Sign in. Okay, yes, we do have the current user in available there. So now we can create some logic around this. We can say, hey, if if you're logged in, you shouldn't see this, right? So we can say maybe current user. So if there is no current user, like that, right? If there is no current user, then render these, right? Then render these. Okay, and then probably need to wrap these into these like that. Okay, perfect. Maybe we don't need that. Okay, so notice that we're not logged in. I'm sorry, we are logged in, so we don't see the sign in and sign out, right? If I sign out, okay, if I refresh, wait, yeah, if I refresh, then I'm not signed in, right? Now, if I sign in, okay, notice that it updates and it doesn't show that anymore. But when I sign out, I also need to clear my current user, right? So in the sign out, right, in my account, where is my account? Account. Where I sign out, I need to set the current user to null, right? So let's do that. So we'll need the dispatcher, we need the set current user, perfect. We'll need to create the dispatcher, const dispatch, right? Use dispatch. And then in sign out, we're going to do dispatch set current user to null. Perfect, right? Okay, so I'm not signed in. Let's sign in. And so Alice, sign in. Okay, so it goes away. So sign out, it brings back. See that? So the left-hand side now is smart, right? To show one or the other, depending on whether you're signed in again. Same thing for account, right? In accounts, only if you're signed in, you should be able to see this, right? So we can wrap this in this, right, like that. So we're not signed in, so we don't see the account, right? Only if we sign in, right, with Alice, right? Then we see the account. We can go to search, we can go users, we can go to account because we are signed in. That makes sense, right? But there's a problem, right? What if I refresh the screen? Well, if I refresh the screen, as far as the server is concerned, I'm still logged in, right? But if I refresh the screen, the reducer is going to be cleared out, right? It's going to be cleared out, and I'm not going to have the current user. If I refresh, notice that the server shows that I'm still signed in, but the reducer cleared out the current user, right? Because I refresh, and the reducer does not survive the refresh, right? So somehow I would need to, even here, right, repopulate my reducer when I refresh, right, and check with the server and see, hey, what is the latest state? Because the true state is the server, we might copy it locally, right? So that, you know, we can navigate between one screen and the other. It remembers who's logged in, right? And as long as, you know, I make sure that, you know, to maintain synchronicity, right, then it's good. Right? But here, for instance, you know, refresh resets the state, right? So I need to reload it. So how do I reload it? So one way to reload it would be ideally when you refresh, right, the screen, something would have to load, you know, make the call to the server, right, retrieve to see whether anyone's logged in or not, correctly populate the current user, whether it's null or not, right, whatever the server comes back as, and then can guarantee that only after knowing that this has been correctly updated, then let all the other components load, right? And then it's guaranteed for the rest of the components that the value of current user is indeed up to date. So how do we do this? So one way to do this is as follows, right? The projects here, notice that we've wrapped the whole application with this tag, right, provider. And so this is a React component that has a body. See that? Look at that. We haven't actually seen or implemented ourselves our own components that have a body, right? Notice this navigation. It doesn't have a body, right? See that? Right. So any of all the components that we've looked so far, we've been able to pass it data used through their attributes, but not, they don't have a body, right? So let's what we're going to introduce now is we're going to create a component that is going to wrap this whole thing, right? And so it's going to have a body, right? And we're going to program it so that it's going to, when it loads, right, when it gets rendered, it's going to go out to the server, it's going to check to see who's logged in or not, right? It's going to populate the reducer correctly. And only after knowing that this has been successfully, that we successfully know whether somebody's actually logged in or not, then is going to load its body, right? The content in its body, right? Which is going to be the entire app. So we're not going to run the app. We're not going to show anything in the app unless we know whether we're logged in or not. Okay. So how do we do that? Right. So I'm going to create a component here, and I'm going to call it current user, right? Current user. So let's say current user, right? You can call it whatever you want, right? But I'm capturing what it's doing, right? Or you know, current user.js. Okay. And so this is going to be, you know, function current user, right? And what it's going to do, it's going to do the same. It's going to fetch the current user from the server, right? And so this is going to the same thing that we did here in the details, right? We fetch the current user. So let's copy that. So fetch current user, right? And like that. We'll need it. We'll need the use effect as well, right? We just need that. We don't need this. We'll need this client, right? So let's bring that client in. We'll need the client, this one, like that. Let's see. We'll need the reducer, right? So we'll need import use effect. Yeah, we'll need the import the use dispatch. Perfect. We'll need the set current from the reducer. Perfect. Why is the reducer not? Current user. Actually, this, I like to move it into users because it has to do with users, right? Yes. So now it has a reducer. Perfect. Client. No, client. Why is it? Which client is this? Okay, no, it's not this client. It's the local client. This client, right? That has the, to find the account, right? So client account, yeah, find the account, blah, blah. And so we're going to set the user. So it's going to fetch and set the user. And it's only going to load its body after it has fetched the current user, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to have a local variable that is going to keep track on whether we're loading or not, meaning we're busy. We don't know yet whether we're logged in or not. We don't have a current user yet, right? So at first it's going to be loading true, meaning we're loading, I'm not ready, okay? Once it comes back from the server, because the server is going to go out, right? This is going to go out to the server, is going to come back. Once it comes back from the server and I have the user, the current user, then I'm going to say we're no longer loading. Right? I'm going to say we're no longer loading. We're ready. I know that where the current user is. I've set it. The reducer is populated. Now I can render the rest of the application. Okay. So how do I render the rest of the application? Well, okay, we need a dispatcher here. So we're going to say const dispatch, right? And this is going to say dispatch, like that, right? Like that. Dispatch. Okay. All right. So basically what we want to do here is return, right? We want to return what? The rest of the application. We want to render the application or not, right? So how do we do that? So basically what I want to do is wrap my entire project with this new component called current user. Current user. Oh, I never, did I export it? I didn't export it. Export. And so here's current user, like that. And but now it's going to have a body, right? It's going to have a body, right? It's going to say this whole thing is either going to render or not, but not until I know whether I'm logged in or not. Okay. And so this whole thing, the body gets passed to the current user, to the component, right? In a attribute called children. So children, right? Children is the representation, right? A reference to all the content of the body of this component. And so what I'm going to return, right, is I'm going to say, right, if I'm loading, so if I'm not loading, then I'm going to render the children like that, right? So if I'm loading, I'm not going to render the children, but if I am loading, I'm going to render the children. Okay. All right. So current user, I think I need to import that. So current user, current user, that user, right? There we go. So yeah, I am logged in. Now if I sign out, it's null. If I refresh, it's 403. And this is because the account route, I believe, the account route is protected. It's protected, saying that you can only see that route if you are logged in. Right? So we can change that here, saying that you don't necessarily have to be logged in to know whether you're logged in. Right? So what we'll do is I'm going to comment that out. There's no need for you to be logged in to know whether you're logged in. Right? So current user, if you are logged in, you'll get the user. If not, you're going to get null, which is perfect. Okay, so let's sign in. Okay, notice I'm not signed in, right? And notice that when I refresh, I see in the network, I can see network. If I refresh, notice that one of the first things that happens is that I'm going to the account. See that? So there's the post. Okay, so right, I'm not returning anything because nobody's logged in, right? So let's clear this out. Let's log in. Let's log in. Sign in. Okay, it's set. Now notice if I refresh, see this here? I'm not losing this value here. It's still being populated by my current user at the top who's making that query, right? And it comes back with the current user and populates my reducer, which is then used by the remainder of the application downstream. See that? Right? And there's no point in rendering this. So in our nav, oh, not here, the net one. Nav, where's nav? I don't need to render this anymore down here. Okay, so now it survives whether I'm logged in or not, right? So now in everywhere else where I am fetching the user, like for instance in the details, right? This user details, I don't have to fetch this current user from the server, right? Instead, I can retrieve it from the reducer, right? So I no longer need to do this, fetch current user. I no longer have to do that, right? I really don't need this because I have it in the reducer, right? So this current user, right? I would retrieve it from the reducer instead, like that. There you go, right? So selector, I'll need to probably load that, use selector. So now when if I go to say Beatles and if I go here and I navigate to Galadriel, I know who's logged in. It's here. It knows, see that on follows? It knows that I'm already logged in there because I have the current user. And if I refresh, I still have the current user, right? Because it goes and fetches it from the server, populates the reducer, and now the reducer, I can select it, right? And I know who's logged in. You know? So anyway, so that's a great technique, right? To be able to share this information with multiple components, right? Without having to go fetch the current user all the time, but storing it in such a way that even if I refresh, right, I populate that with the latest state that is on the server, right? Because the server is the one who has the ultimate say, right, of what the actual state of the application is, right? So yeah, this was I did say a couple of weeks ago that state management was going to become more complex, right, to deal with it, because now you're maintaining 3 different state, you're maintaining it on the client with the reducer, right, which kind of it's only a copy or a cache of whatever's on the server, right, and it allows you to share it with multiple components. Also allows you to navigate a whole bunch of places without having to go out to the server, right? But the server is the one who's maintaining the real state, right? And we need to make that synchronization of clearing it when I log out, right? Or populating it when I log in, right? Or repopulating if I refresh, right? So those are the points of synchronization between the client and the server. Right? As long as I'm navigating and nothing has changed, the client can navigate a whole bunch of different places with the cached statement, right, that there's a person who's logged in and I don't need the server because because I already fetched it, right? I'm storing it in my local reducer as a cache, like it's a copy, right? I can use that logic, right, to turn on things, not show things and things like that, right? And finally, I'll have the database. So I have to have a synchronization from the database to the server from the client to the client, right? So anyway, yeah, so that's all I have for you today. Any questions? I'm going to commit this that implements follows, right? So this is the follows and also current user synchronization with the server, right? So this is git add git commit follows and current and user reducer. So again, feel free to use this as your own, right? Follows and user reducer. Okay. Could you help me debugging for A6 after lecture? Sure.